Welcome to The Dream Show. I'm Jane Teresa Anderson, and this is episode 289. I've just finished recording the conversation with my guest, rat race recovery coach Carolina Barker, who lives in Porto in Portugal. We explored her dream and then looked at how it relates to her life and her business, life and business both. Carolina then shared exactly how the dream relates to her life and her business, and we launched into some wonderful conversations, which I know that you'll love from there. So first up, a little bit more about Carolina. Carolina, the rat race recovery coach, don't you just love that title? The rat race recovery coach. She helps women break free from the stress and burnout of toxic work environments. She knows that leaving a job isn't enough, and many people still feel trapped in fear, self-doubt, and exhaustion long after they quit. They may have left physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, they are still connected to that work. And through her coaching, Carolina helps her clients to stop the cycle and heal deeply and find clarity for the road ahead. Her approach is holistic and empowering, combining deep insights with practical tools to make real, lasting change towards balance, joy, and real success on their own terms. And after we look at her dream and see how it connects with her life, Carolina does give us a little bit more information about the job that she had in corporate in American tech and how she eventually left and set up her own business and where she's going now into the future, which might be a little bit different. But before we go into my conversation with Carolina, here's a reminder of my dream resources. My website is janeteresa.com. That's Teresa without an H, where you can listen to every episode of The Dream Show right back to episode 1. You can also access the most recent ones on all the usual podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, etc. Also on my website, you can read hundreds of blogs on dreams and dreaming that I've written over the years. You can find out about my books, my courses, and how to consult me about your dreams. And at the end of my chat with Carolina, we share her contact details. And in her particular case, she's also giving you a little gift. So stay in for that. And of course, I've also put the contact details in the show notes. That's enough of the housekeeping. Let's get on with the show. This is Carolina. Welcome to The Dream Show, Carolina.
Thank you so much, Jane. I'm super happy to be here. Very excited. And looking so forward to what we're going to discuss today.
I'm looking forward to it too. And although everybody can only listen to this, they're not seeing the pictures. I'm sitting looking at you in this beautiful early morning sunlight. You're looking at me as the evening creeps towards my bedtime. But it looks so lovely there. You are in Portugal.
I am. And I need to say, I am still in Portugal because in about 2-3 months, I will be migrating to Mexico. So I will be in a totally different continent. And yes, I'm excited for that as well, of course. Although the 4.5 years that I was here were absolutely amazing. Portugal is a wonderful place to be. And I can, for anybody who is doubting to come to Europe and visit Portugal, I can definitely recommend it in every sense of the way. So, yes.
I've always heard that anybody working in Portugal or visiting for conferences has always said it's a magical place. Before we go to your dream, just curious, why Mexico?
So it's actually we decided to follow my husband's career in that sense, in sense of where we live. Of course, I run my own business, my own coaching business, but for him, he works in corporate, and he has this wonderful, let's say, a choice to move around every once in a while. And so we decided to opt in for that. We do not have children. We have 3 cats that we move around with us, who have now been, because they're not that old yet, they have been in 2 countries. We had cats before that also have been in several countries. And so they move around with us. And so it's kind of the easy way we can do it. So and we love to be in a place for multiple years. So instead of being like the digital nomad, moving around every 3 months, we move around every 4 years, more or less, and really get to know the culture, live in between the local people, and experience everything that a country has to offer. And also, of course, take our time to travel within the country and to really see what the food is like, what the people are like, but also what the people on the countryside are like. So not just stay in the city. It's I don't know. It's just it's a life you need to love, because of course every 4 years you kind of say goodbye to your local friends and everybody. And funny enough, I find that those friendships, the real friendships from each place, I now have friends with guest rooms everywhere around the world. And that's just, I mean, I love that. And we visit them regularly. So yeah.
And is it your obligation to make sure you have a big enough place with guest bedrooms wherever you go to bring them so they can come and visit you?
Well, we do that anyway because our family is both. So my husband is Brazilian and his family lives in Brazil, and my family lives in the Netherlands. So even being in Portugal, we are already hours of flight away from them. And so we anyway always have a guest room in case our family and friends want to come and visit. It's really a non-negotiable for us. Yes.
A beautiful lifestyle. People listening might be thinking, oh, we usually start with a dream, but that was really lovely. I enjoyed that. So let's see your dream, Carolina. As always, I have no idea at all what any dream anyone's going to bring to me. So I'm all ears.
Well, and so it was so funny when you said, "Well, we're going to discuss a dream." I thought, I don't dream anything, and that was, I think, about 3 weeks ago, right? That we talked about what possibly what we could discuss on this podcast. And since then, I've been dreaming like crazy, and I found that there's like a common thread throughout all my dreams. All of them somehow have to do with my work, but in all kinds of different ways. So I chose one that I found was very interesting and that I couldn't decipher. Like everything else is like, okay, yes, I'm supporting this person with something, and it was sort of a reliving or like the scenarios that I could explain for myself, let's say. And then there was one that I couldn't explain for myself. So I got you a weird one. Is that okay?
Good. I love a weird one.
Okay. So, so um, I had my dream. Where would you like me to start? Just walk you through it the way I walked
Yes.
through it. Is that okay?
Yes. Yeah. Just as you experienced it.
Okay. So it was quite a long dream actually. So it started with me being in this huge mansion, like one of those English huge Victorian houses, I guess. And it had all these levels, a lot of levels, and a lot of hidden little chambers, a little tower somewhere, almost like in between a mansion and a castle. Well, actually, when you looked from the outside, it was a mansion, and going in, it was more like a castle. It also had brick walls, and when walking in, it had an inner garden, which was very, um, everything was dead in the garden. But not only dead, it was black. And um, like plants, like it had been set on fire, sort of, like it had been burned down. And so there was this place, like this little garden in the middle, and sort of an open balcony on the floor level. How do you call those? One of those where the monks used to walk on.
Yes.
And so I was there with a friend, and it was strange. We were hunted. We were hunted, because of a game. And she was hunted and I was hunted. And we were going through this game together. And part of the game was that we were hunted, but it was hunted for life and death. So I knew that if they would catch me, I would be shot with an arrow, very very particularly. I would be shot with an arrow. And then there were several ways to get out of the game. And my friend at some point chose to get out of the game by working in the kitchen. And while she was working in the kitchen, I was sort of standing outside of the door, and she was very badly treated. And so I barged in, and the man who was treating her badly, I thought she was getting murdered, that she was being shot with that arrow, despite the fact that she was in that kitchen working. And so I barged in and I told the man that was bullying her, "You are such a coward. Why are you bullying her? You have no right to bully people. You have no right to treat people like that." And and I started explaining to him, so this is where kind of my work comes in. I started explaining to him, you cannot put your generational trauma on this lady. You cannot be this angry. This angriness does not come from your life. This angriness comes from your parents, from your grandparents, from the generations before you. This angriness is passed down to you. And then he sort of broke down in tears, and he says, "Oh, that's also where my addiction comes." And so I remember having a conversation, but then it gets vague, and I don't remember the conversation that I had with him. And so I had that, and then he of course he went back to his work, but kind of that's where there's sort of a split in my dream where I don't remember exactly because of waking up. I know I dreamt it, but I don't know how. And then I'm back on this gallery around that dead garden, and there's this person, a lady that comes running towards me, and she has these blue eyes, and she comes running towards me, and she grabs me, and she says, "I'm so scared, I'm so scared." And so I ask her, "Are you being hunted?" And she says, "No, but this place is haunted. This place is really haunted." And so I'm a psychic medium. So I wasn't afraid, and I asked her. I said, "How? What do you mean? Do you want to show me what?" And I thought to myself in the back of my head, I thought, "Ooh, this is my job. This is how I get out of being hunted and being shot by an arrow, right? Because if you could make yourself useful, if you could give value to whatever was there, you would, you would, you would not be hunted. You would get like, well, anyway." And so, and she said, "Yes, yes, please." And so she pushes me forward, and she stays behind me, and she pushes me forward to this beautiful door. And it's like one of those, almost a church door with all these little, it was a little bit eerie, to be honest. There's like these things around it that I don't remember exactly what they were, but I felt the 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 frame of the door gave me this feeling like if I step through this door, this is the point of no return. If I step through this door, whatever is behind the door, I'm gonna have to deal with. And there's no way I can go back. That it's like a portal. I if I go through, and so I went through the door, and I I it was just another piece of the castle, and I saw puddles, all these puddles of water, and there were mirrors hanging on the wall. And from the puddles of water came these. The first one I stepped over, I saw a child, and it was talking to me. I couldn't hear what it was saying, but it was talking to me. And then I passed a mirror, and there was another person talking to me. And I wanted to stop, but the lady kept on pushing me on. I said, but these spirits want to talk to me. She said, "No, no, that's not the one. That's not the one." And she kept on pushing me until we came to this open field, and it was beautiful green and lush and with flowers, and we came and we walked to sort of a lake. Um, and so the grass abruptly stopped, and there was a lake, beautiful lake. And I looked into the lake, and there were all these people. I think about 5 or 6, and they were not drowning or anything. They were just looking up. They seemed to be quiet, but also a little bit disturbed. Like they were waiting for me. Like they were waiting for me. Like somebody promised them that I would be there. And I looked down, and they looked up at me, and all of them started talking all at the same time. And I couldn't make out anything of what they were saying. And the lady said, "No, no, wait. You have to wait until he comes." And then there was this person that actually stood out a little bit from the water that came towards me. And it wasn't really a person, because it was like it was a like a transparent person, like really like a spirit, like the way I see spirits in my mediumship. And he came towards me, and he said, "We could really use your help. When and after this I woke up, by the way. He said, "When are you gonna live what you're supposed to be doing? Or when are you gonna do what you're supposed to be doing?" And then I woke up.
Well, you know, for somebody who doesn't remember their dreams, that is
No,
absolutely
but I
fabulous.
remember them vividly now. I cannot. You don't want to know how many. So that was the one of the ones. I have all of these now, and I have them in the middle of the night as well. Although then I go back to sleep and I forget them again. Yes.
That's wonderful, Carolina. So much there. We're not going to take a deep. We're not going to look at everything in it, but we're going to look
No,
at some
of
of it, which is
course.
fantastic. I love it, and it paints such a beautiful picture. Um, the bottom line of the dream, the last bit, you know, we're waiting for you to do what you really want to do. I mean, we assume that you are being rat race recovery coach. We assume that you are already doing what you really want to do. But there's a sense here of going through the portal at the end. I can't go back if I go through this, almost as if you're considering in the dream, or your unconscious mind is saying, yes, well, you thought that you were doing exactly what you came here to do, but there's another step, you know, and you make that commitment in the dream and you go and do it. We'll come back to that later. But is that kind of what's happening at the moment?
It is. There's one aspect in my coaching that I could add to it that I'm not at the moment.
Okay. We'll come back to that later. Your unconscious mind is going, come, see this, see this. I love the feeling that it was like an old English mansion. It was a Victorian mansion. But what's your feeling about that kind of architecture?
Oh, that's a good question. So if I feel these types of I love this type of architecture. I love to walk around in it. So I love it because there's so much energy. I'm very energy sensitive, and you can feel if you step into a building, an older building, an historical building, you can feel the energy of the centuries before it. I can sense it, and it's usually very positive, even if there's even if there's have been wars going on or anything else. If you look at these historical buildings, very often the years that there was happiness, and the years that there was prosperity, and the years that there was abundance are usually much more than the few years that there were wars. So there's usually a very positive energy of of family, of union, of yeah, of companionship, and everything like that. So I love. I personally would, for me, when I go to those buildings, I look around at the architecture, but mostly I tend to focus on what I sense in my body, and what different types of energy I perceive. And so it's a perfect combination because my husband loves the museum part of the buildings, and I do that.
That's perfect. So the beginning of a dream will often kind of state the situation that the rest of the dream is going to go on to explore. So in many ways, you said this situation is about my energy, my feelings about energy, how I enjoy being in touch with energy, and specifically, you were really interested to note that when there's been a trauma or something bad or a war, that is actually a small, even though people focus on that when they go to see an old building, oh, there was war or famine or people were hanged or whatever it was, you're sensing, yes, but that's a small part. There's joy, there's abundance, there's all these other things. So the beginning of the dream suggests you're looking at your abilities to tune into energy, your abilities to tune into the joyful side of life compared to the more traumatic side of life. But the beginning of the dream can also represent yourself as a person. So we can also say here that you are, as a person, have many rooms. We all have many rooms. We're like a building with many rooms. And this room with you, as with all of us, goes back many centuries, but you are in touch with that. And there are some areas within you, as they are within all of us, which are maybe more traumatic or difficult or conflictual, like war, but that you are seeing and appreciating the abundance and wealth of all the rest. This is the beginning of the dream. So it's quite interesting to note that there's an inner garden which is dead, which has been burned down. And I imagine, but I don't know, Carolina, that being a rat race recovery coach, you probably deal with a lot of people with burnout, do you?
Yes, and I've had my own burnout. Well, almost burnout. I'm not sure. I think burnout. I had a burn down. Let me put it like that. I was super lucky to stop just before it reached the point of burnout. And so yes, I've been in corporate for the longest time. Actually, part time doing my coaching business and part time being in corporate settings. And I know firsthand how the pressure and the expectations and uh, just the not being able to say no, how that can really, really influence you, and how that it's just like I was always promised. It was like dangling a carrot in front of the donkey. I was always promised a promotion. I was always promised something that I was chasing and I was working for, but that never came because there was always an excuse not to give it to me. And so I know firsthand how it is to go through all that and to push yourself beyond something and beyond your own boundaries and beyond how much time you really want to be away from family and beyond all these things that you said when you started working. This is my sanctuary. This is the point where I will never cross. And then you find yourself crossing it anyway because the promotion is so close. And so I know how that is, and I've experienced it firsthand. And now I also have a lot of clients that experience exactly that. And of course, because of my experience, but also because of all the training that I did over the last 15 years, because of the fact that I'm a medium, and because of the family constellation facilitation that I do, it's all that kind of comes together to support them to also get out and of that rat race and to reset their boundaries and make sure that they do not get to the point where I got, let's say,
And there's so
or
much
get
of
out
that
of it
there
as fast as possible.
get out
I'm
of
sorry.
it. There's so much of that in the dream, isn't there? Because you mentioned in the rat race going after the promises which are never fulfilled. And right at the end of the dream, these people are waiting for you because you mentioned the word promise. I wrote it down that
Wow.
you were promised to us. So there's a sense of working for promise there. We don't know whether that comes. And of course, in the dream, it's a game in which you're hunted. We could say the corporate world is a bit like a game, if we're being honest,
Fair, yes.
in which you are hunted and you run around like mad. You mentioned boundaries there, and there was a mention of boundaries when you went to the kitchen and you told the guy that he was a coward and bullying. So you were essentially arguing for boundaries there as well. So there's
True.
several things there. Yeah. So we go back to the garden, this inner garden, which was dead and black. That is not only to me a reference of all the work that you do with people's inner lives and when they're feeling burned out, not just physically burned out on the outside, but it's the inner burnout that's, the tough thing, but may also be referencing this dream, maybe taking you back to when you have had burnout as well. And you're seeing this in the shape of the plants that should be living and growing and evolving are actually dead and black.
That is so interesting.
It is. It's also interesting to note, this just occurs to me as a side note, that of course, when in nature, as you know, when fire comes, the regrowth is often more lush and more beautiful. So there's a kind of slight reference to that. And it's
Like a
interesting
phoenix.
that, yeah, the phoenix, definitely. And it's interesting that at that part of the dream, you mentioned there was a circular, like a balcony where the monks went round. So to me, I was thinking, is this kind of referencing the spiritual side here, looking not only we're looking in this dream interpretation parallel, we're looking at what you offer for your clients and what your experiences have been. So bringing the spiritual, the meditation, the monks walking around this burnout. What does it mean? What can we take from this spiritually? Going back to the sense of the house, with, as you said, that there's, we overlook the abundance and the joy of the situation. Maybe this is we overlook the lessons of the burnout. So this dream has kind of taken you back through, which you already know, the spiritual lessons of the burnout.
Mm.
And the problem is that you might get shot with an arrow. So can you describe the arrow a bit? Was it like a medieval bow and arrow, or was it what?
A medieval bow and arrow, yes. I felt like it was one of those. I felt like it was almost one of those Native American arrows. Like
Ah,
a, yeah, kind of. It felt like a Native American arrow, a
and what
little
would
bit,
that mean to
or
you?
indigenous people, which
Indigenous.
whatever
Yeah.
that. Yeah, so I guess that's the point I cannot quite figure out. There were when we walked, I could see them. This is a little bit sticking out of other people that they got before.
Life and
when we
death,
when, before we walked in through the door. So
Well,
um,
you kind of got this life and death, and the idea of this is a game, and some people say, well, life is an illusion and it's a game. That's one avenue you can go down. But you're mentioning earlier, this is a life and death game, and we've already had the symbol of the plant burnout. After the death of the plant comes back life. And I don't know. I'm wondering whether the sense of the indigenous bow and arrow is more a sense of the part of yourself which is indigenous, and by that I mean the ancient part of yourself is
well, and
saying
yes, that would actually. Sorry, I
you're
enthusiasm here.
jumping. Yeah.
That would actually make so much sense. Please go.
Yeah. So I was going to say the ancient indigenous part of yourself. Then let's put an end to this running around in this corporate environment, doing this game, being hunted. This sense of being hunted. Let's put an end to this. Even though you're trying to escape the arrow, maybe we want to put an end to this and begin something new. And that is where you then, according to the notes that I speedily took, explained generational trauma to this guy. So you're then, once again, two parallels. What you do with your clients, explain and help them to understand the effect of generational trauma on how they perceive and work in life now. But also for yourself, acknowledging in this it's kind of like, before I go to Mexico, I've got to have this huge dream that's going to wrap up everywhere I've been and everything I have done in one thing. And this is me acknowledging my generational trauma, which we all have. And then you woke up and then you went back to sleep and you were back in the gallery again. And that was the lady with the blue eyes. What do blue eyes mean to you?
um, so what I associate that with is actually the um, is the Ice King from the Game of Thrones. Funny enough, it was that type of blue eyes, but not threatening at all. But I do see that as the Ice King, something that could be that that you have to confront because you have to defeat, but
Yes.
that does not necessarily mean threatening on the Ice King. But for me, it didn't mean threatening. So yeah.
Beautiful. So whereas it's something you have to confront, and some people might be very frightened to confront their fears, but as you said, you weren't really that scared because you have experience in facing fears, and you know that facing fears takes you to a better place. So
Yes.
everyone and everything in the dream represents something about yourself. So she's a part of yourself that in the past might have been, oh, I'm really scared. And you're going, no, it's okay. Or the part of yourself that might have been threatening. I know we're doing more than our 10 minutes, but is this okay?
Oh, we. I wasn't looking at the time. I'm sorry.
No, we're going to be talking for ages, but I normally say to people, look, we'll only do 10 minutes on your dream because we'll talk about you, but we're kind of talking about your work at the same time, but that's all
Exactly.
good.
Exactly.
You feel, you say at that point that you feel, she says the place is haunted. And, we're all haunted by our past in a
Yes.
way. So, I always think when there's a dream that involves haunting, I always think, oh, good. We're going to find out what haunts us. We're going to find out what limiting beliefs still operate in our lives and haunt us, what generational trauma. Because if we can find out what they are, we can stop those things haunting us and making us, self-sabotage, or we need to get rid of what haunts us and release ourselves to move forward. So there's a reference to that in the dream. And then you get to the church door. So we got another spiritual reference, but instead of monks this time, it's church door. Did you, what kind of religion did you picture that to be?
So the feeling that it gave me, I don't think it was a religion per se. So it had elements. Because I couldn't see it, right? I don't remember it. But if I would tap into what it's felt like for me, I think it was just the universe. And I truly believe that there is let's say a piece of the universe, there's God, Buddha, Allah, whatever you want to call your higher power. There is a piece of the higher power living in all of us, and it just feels like that, the universe. Yeah, yes.
Perfect. And that's one of the most powerful ways to approach a dream, is to feel into the symbols. What does it feel like? Even imagine you're the church, you're the arch, and how does that feel? But you've nailed it beautifully. So there's a sense of it's a portal, it's a point of no return. And to me, what this suggests is, reading between the lines, I am at a place in my life and my business where I'm thinking of going even more into the spiritual side of it than I have up until now. And if I do this, for good, for bad, Carolina, haven't worked out yet. I know there's no return, because people will then know that I'm coming at this from a spiritual angle. You go through, which is great. There's mirrors, there's puddles, all these reflections. Maybe the puddles are tears, I don't know, but they're because you had the guy crying earlier, but they're reflections. We look at ourselves as reflections of whatever, of the divine, of whatever, or so many things. And then you get to the open field, but out of the house, we really are into nature here. And we go on from there, and there's a sense of waiting for what has been promised. And in this sense, it's not so much what you described earlier as the in corporate life, always chasing the promises that are never fulfilled. This one feels like a spiritual promise. Here I am, I'm ready to do this thing. And the bottom line of the dream, did I write it down, was something about, what was the last bit you said about making yourself, back in the game of the dream, you had to make yourself useful or give some value. And I imagine you teach that all the time with your clients, but this is reinforcing for you. What is it you want to do when you go to Mexico? In what ways can you make yourself even more useful than you already are? In what ways can you give even more value than you already do? And in what ways can you also teach these skills to your clients? And what was the very last sentence? Have you got it written down, the last sentence of your dream?
I know, because I left myself a voice message.
Oh,
So I got it on the voice message.
I think the last bit was something about being authentic, being true to yourself.
When are you going to do what you when are you going to live? It's like it felt like when are you going to live when are you going to live up to your potential? Maybe
Yes,
it's
yes.
something like that. When are you going to finally live up to your potential?
Right. So you already have mega lived up to your potential because I know what you do. But as always, the universe calls for a next step and a next step and a next step.
Uh-huh.
And it's like this dream is asking for that. So would you like to springboard from the stream and then we will find out and help our audience understand exactly what you do?
I think springboarding off that dream, the one thing I have been holding back on in everything I do, and that's because I come from corporate, basically, is in corporate they always say intuition cannot be put in a spreadsheet. So very often I would feel something was off, and people would ask me, "But what are the numbers? Give me the numbers." Or we would hire a new person, and I could sense something is not right with this person, and but their resume looked so good on paper, and on each of those occasions, be it short or long after the decision, something indeed was not right. Something that you cannot read, that you cannot see, that you cannot put in numbers. And so I have the one thing I have learned is to stuff it away. And I'm a psychic medium by birth. So I have, for my entire life, I have been talking to spirits. They showed up in my room, which was quite scary when I was very young. Um, which and so but it's something I cannot undo. Let's say I can put a lid on it for a short while, but it's like a boiling spaghetti pan. At some point, it's going to come creeping out and it's going to boil over. And so um, it's something that I have. And the one thing I have not incorporated in my coaching is that my psychic mediumship. And that is because I've always felt that it's something that cannot be put in a spreadsheet. What can you really show? And I think I needed time to build up this confidence and build up evidence for myself, not for other people. Evidence for myself that that part of me is good enough, which is kind of funny because there's always these layers of the onion. You know, I know I'm good enough. I feel I'm good enough, but there was this one thing that I thought maybe not, maybe just not that, because it's such a it's such an area where you it's a little bit controversial, isn't it? um, People, not everybody believes in spirits. Not everybody believes in angels. Not everybody believes that there's something after we leave the physical body. So it's a little bit like, and the group of people that do not believe in that is larger than when, for example, you say something about um, um, well, I don't know. I don't really have an example. I should have thought about that before.
Can you step into it gradually? In other words, with your clients and you're teaching spreadsheet stuff, maybe, and maybe you're not, and you can reference what you hear and the messages you speak up without saying where they're coming from.
Well, actually, that's what I already do. But I feel that this is in this switch to Mexico. There's also a moment that I would like to uh, really, really just put it in as part of my services. So not the mediumship itself. I do spirit readings a lot, like for people, but it's always on a pay it forward basis. So I always do these. I every once in a while via my newsletter or via Facebook mostly. I offer this. Hey, who wants to do a spirit reading? It's free and it's usually 30 minutes. I love to do that to pay it forward.
Yes.
And so it's kind of a hobby. It always has been a hobby. Um, and but now I'm thinking of actually putting it in with within my coaching. So just opening the channel, getting everything uh, that I would that the client needs to hear, and um, and using that. Um, that's also because over the last 2 years, so I am like I mentioned before, I'm a family constellations facilitator, and family constellations deals with it's like a it has two types of working. So the first one is that you externalize your inner world. So I have an online environment. It's like a field. You can put little avatars in there. It has all kinds of components, elements, flowers, animals, everything. And so, whenever there's something that is bothering you, like a big decision or something that's under the skin, you're not feeling happy under the skin. There's something. You can externalize your inner world by putting it out on that field and putting yourself in. Feel how you feel, and then putting that element in, or putting maybe the person that you have friction with in, and see how you feel, and come to a resolution. And why does this work? Because the unconscious mind, where that problem exists, right? Because if we were conscious about it, we could do something about it. The unconscious mind works really well with metaphor and works really well with images and seeing things. So you can reach the unconscious mind by externalizing in an image your inner thoughts. So that's one way of working with family constellations. And the second way of working with family constellations is that when you build on for example, on your family tree, you can, if you, for example, have a repetitive pattern, let's say you have, I'm going to take this into the extreme, an addiction. And there's this addiction, and you cannot get rid of this addiction, and you don't know why. And it can be something simple. Well, addictions are never simple, but it can be something like eating sugar. It can also be smoking, for example. It can be alcohol. Um, there is and there can be heavier addictions. I work with a lot of people that have heavier addictions, like really addictions that you can never really truly get rid of. Although that holds for all addictions, I guess. And so you can look into your family line and realize where this is coming from generationally speaking. So there's a lot of things that you can discover by externalizing that inner world and by externalizing your ancestral line to see if there's something there that is um, that you can truly that maybe you're carrying that's not yours. And so in my particular case, over the last 2 years, I've been working with this for 13 years. And in the last 2 years, I've been doing a specific training for family constellations and systemic constellations that is trauma informed. And so I now support people through trauma, more deeper trauma, let's say. Um, and I forgot why we got to this point. Was it part of the dream? I'm sorry.
You launched into it and we're all listening to you. But I was thinking that's a beautiful explanation of it. And it's an example of why some people might come to you. But also, of course, what you're describing there is similar to the dream work, in talking about a dream, we're externalizing it and putting it into the world by talking about it. And, you mentioned in family constellations, it's putting symbols of the family. In the dream, we're bringing the symbols from the outer world and looking at them. And in dreams, if we dream of members of the family, for example, those dreams might help us to understand the trauma and or good stuff and or whatever that we've inherited, the beliefs that we've inherited from our mother, father, grandfather, great grandfather. So there are some
Mhm.
similarities there, which is really
Yes.
good.
Well,
Yeah,
and
I'd love you. Yeah, go on.
no, and I think now I remember. So mediumship supports me in that because it gives
Yes.
me very intuitive. I can look at the field. I can feel into the field. I can I can I can almost sense when people when I look at on the field when people are standing there, the avatars are standing across from each other. I can feel when they need to move. and I can feel the tension of the field. And sometimes even the night before, I already feel in my body certain symptoms like, oh, I have a shoulder pain. Where does that come from? And the next day, my clients comes to me and they say, oh, I have such a pain in my shoulder. I want to work on that.
Yes.
I want to see where this pain in my shoulder comes from. Is it from my work? Is it from? And then we start to explore to see where it comes from. And so it's I feel that mediumship part of it makes it gives it one deeper level even, and that intuition um, supports that process.
Yes, that
That's
makes so
where I
much
was
sense.
going.
Yeah, that's great. I'm not a medium, at least I don't think I am. But in a similar way, when I do my dream work and the way that I teach people dream work, there are tools, there are techniques, there are definitely processes you can follow, and then you add in the intuition as well. So
Hmm.
it's working with both things together. And I
Yes.
sometimes think in dream work, the intuition is where you have actually applied all the tools, but with a rapid lightning speed, and you've just come to the result. But I agree with you, that clairsentience feeling, I do sometimes have that where I can feel a part of the body or something that tells me something about the other person.
Hmm.
I'd love, because we can see from your dream and from what you've said, that it's been this almost, even though you're young, it's been this long, slow process of having the corporate career, having the burnout, setting up your business, obviously doing really well for your business. You've been doing it for a long time and now considering the next step. What was the, for our listeners, what was the turning point? How did you get out of corporate? Because that's really hard for a lot of people to do it. And as shown in your dream, it's really hard when you're running around trying to avoid the bow and arrow. You don't find the way out. What was your way out? How did you do it? What was the impetus?
So I was very, very lucky. I built a side hustle basically. I tested so many things. I failed a couple of times, of course, and I so there was first I started setting boundaries. I learned how to set boundaries at work because everything starts with getting back your time. There's nothing in this world as important as time because you can never get it back. And so it's for me it was setting those boundaries and starting to say, well, you know what? I am going to go home at 6. And even if people disagree, even if my boss says, what? It's because that would happen to me a lot. I would come in first in the office. And so you would think I would leave first. And I wasn't. I wasn't leaving the first. I usually left last. And so I just had things pile up on top and on top and on top and on top. And I just couldn't say no. And what I told myself is that I loved it. And because I had to, right? I had to tell myself that I loved it because how would I how would I be able to justify to myself that I would spend 14 hours a day at a work that I didn't love? And so for my realization was at a moment that I really broke down. I broke down in my car crying, and it wasn't the first time, but something snapped. Actually, it was the day that I was told that my promotion that I worked so hard for wasn't going to go through. And I thought, and I really felt like that donkey, but now the carrot was gone. I was exhausted, and there was no reward for whatever I did, and I put so much aside for that, and that was it. I snapped, and I said, this is it. And so because of that, I started setting boundaries, and it took me a while. Huh? It's not like it wasn't a process of a week. I think it took me like 6 weeks to build the confidence to say, yes, I'm going home. And I would still feel guilty about it a little bit, but I would go home. At least I would go. And I would tell them, I'm sorry, but I would love to help you find somebody else to do this work. But my pile is full at this moment. I cannot take any more. And to get over that feeling of what if that stops me from getting my next promotion? What if saying no it stops me from all the beautiful things that are promised to me, and but I just had enough evidence that things would never come. And then I kind of, so I started with that. And very slowly, I started building confidence in that. And I think it took me about 3 months. And then I worked with a coach, by the way. I didn't do this by myself. I worked with a coach because after the first 2 weeks, I realized that boundary setting, that the way I wanted to communicate that, I needed to think that through and I needed to talk that through. And I needed to talk that through with somebody, not with a therapist, because therapists will ask you, but how did you get here? I wasn't interested in how I got here. I wanted to take the point and then move forward.
And leave.
Okay, I am here. I don't want to talk about my past. I don't want to talk about how I got here. I want to talk about how I get out of this. How do I move forward from being here in this place where I don't want to be? And so after 2 weeks, I realized I don't want to do this by myself. So I contracted a coach, and she was amazing because she gave me that mirror and she showed me my blind spots because that's basically what a coach does, right? Showing you your blind spots and feeding back your own words, and then you realize, really, did I say that? Oh, that's so weird, or that's something I really don't want to do, or that's something. And so I started thinking about myself. I started creating more awareness about when I said yes, when I automatically on autopilot because of conditioning, corporate conditioning, did everything that they wanted me to do. And then in within 3 months, I had this boundary set. And so I could go home and I still had energy. Of course, the first months I slept over weekends, which I usually did. And it was such a release. It was a release of everything because I felt that things would, I don't know, fall into place again. I felt energized again. I started doing things with my friends again over the weekends. I started picking up my gym routine because I love to go to the gym, but I didn't have that bandwidth to go. And so I really I that was the process. So that was the first 3 months. And after that, I slowly started to see where my things went, where I would pull back into that specific area. Where when what people would say to me or do that would suddenly make me go back to being that person that said yes to everything. And so I became aware of that. And so within, I still worked in corporate the longest time. But because of all those boundaries, I started really enjoying it. I actually started enjoying it, not just telling myself that I loved my job while burning out. I actually started enjoying my job, and I started seeing other people, behave in a certain way. I recognized their behavior. I recognized what it did to me, and then I kind of and here maybe this is the game. I kind of saw it as a game. How can I elevate myself and how can I elevate others? And I think that's where my passion also comes from, where I could see when I used certain words and things that people would really connect with me, and when I was honest and truly myself, that people would suddenly connect with me way more than when I was in that autopilot that's always saying yes, because I couldn't even see them, I couldn't even hear them, I never had time for that. And so suddenly I started building a community. So within my workplace. And it wasn't a community of people that worked too much. It was a community of support. It was a community of, well, basically everybody carrying each other and helping each other out. So how I eventually got out is by continuing that, by expanding on that, and I realized that I loved working with people like this, elevating people, making people think, holding that mirror up to them, as my coach did for me. And slowly, people. There was this one manager that I had conversations with, and he asked me if I wanted to do that with him on a bi-weekly basis, and so I did. And that's how I kind of rolled into coaching. Um, and I started my side hustle because I asked him at some point, so we've been doing this for a while. Do you think there's other people in the company that would appreciate it? He said yes. And I got my work gave me a coaching training actually. And I started developing from there. I started a side hustle because people heard about it. And so I started doing things on Saturday. And at some point, my side hustle became too big for me to do on the side. And I decided to do that during the week. Long
What a
story.
beautiful transition. That is so lovely. What a beautiful transition.
It has been. It has been, yes. And I
And
think it's
and
all about making that time for yourself to be able to be able to, right?
yes,
And
it's almost
yeah.
like, instead of just turning your back and walking out, you made things right. You learned a lot. You got the gifts. You got the gifts that the situation was teaching you, and you took
Hmm.
those and were able to use those for other people.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
the name of your business is so fantastic, Rat Race Recovery Coach. Whether or not you use that when you do the spirit medium part of it as well, I don't know. But
Possibly.
where did when did the title of the business come up for you, Rat Race, and how pleased were you when you thought of it?
Oh, amazing. Amazingly pleased. It was like, so I have been, so like I say, I do a training, I have done a training every year. And one of the things I did at some point was a marketing training. Because also a marketing training to teach marketing, not just to have marketing, because I had it pretty well set up. And then at some point, we had to go through these exercises. Of course, you have to go through the exercises because I went through everything that I put my clients through. I walked the talk already. And because I feel that if I still push myself over and over and over again. It's I regularly, when I fear something, I regularly push beyond that, like because I really want to make sure that if I ask my clients to push past their fear and to see what's behind that, maybe that portal, right, the point of
Yes,
no return, then I need to make sure that I keep my mind trained to push beyond points of no return. And
absolutely. Yeah.
so it's that when I do these trainings every year. So this was a marketing training that I did to teach marketing. I had to go through all these exercises. I thought I had it all figured out, and then I there was this one question that the guy asked. He said, and which I now took over and also coach my clients through, is what is your biggest wound? What is the thing that you got over in your life that is that so profoundly shaped who you are today in your business or as a person, that you could help other people with? And I already knew, but there's levels of knowing, you know? There's always levels of knowing. There's like an onion, you know, but then there's a deeper layer. Um, and so I wrote that out, and I wrote out my deepest wound, which was definitely corporate and the toxic environment. And not it's I you know, you have in your life, you have multiple deepest wounds, of course. I had one with my mediumship. That's why it's so hard for me to bring that out, which is now the layer of the onion that I'm now in.
Yes,
And then and another big one was corporate and the pressure and all that, um, and everything around it that really that I healed from. And so writing that one down, I realized that there is that corporate pain that I had, that I was still carrying it with me. And actually, when I left corporate physically, I realized that there was still mentally and spiritually, and emotionally very much connected to it. And I realized that the recovery from corporate, the recovery from that rat race, was not so much in leaving it and starting my own business, although that was a great step. it was disconnecting from it emotionally and spiritually and mentally. And so that disconnect, I realized that was, I did that partially while I was in corporate, but there was this surprise of how it still showed up in my life afterwards. And
Yes.
so I really needed, I think I needed another maybe a year or two in which I worked with a coach on and off to get through these phases, where I really needed to look at myself and say, okay, how am I still connected to that? Am I still, do I still have that lower back pain with those muscles those sprint muscles that hurt me? Do I still have this feeling of needing to get up at 6:30 in the morning and jumping out of bed and and doing instead of just allowing my time to relax and think. And so that disconnect still happened, let's say. And so that's how I looked at it, and I felt that's that's the rat race that you recovery that you really need to do. That's the it's the leaving physically, but absolutely after that, healing on a deeper
Yes.
level, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. And so yes, I was thrilled to have that tagline, and I think I really live it in every sense of the word.
That is profound and extremely valuable work. It's a real niche, but a much needed niche. And although obviously to begin with, that was your client base, that's what you were asking for, people that were either about to leave corporate or had left corporate and needed the healing, needed to navigate the recovery. Does that still describe most of your clients?
Most of my clients now, well, I have a split 50-50. So I have a lot of leaders and people in the workplace that do not want to leave and that really love their jobs, but want to make sure that they know they are hitting this this point where they are starting to burn down, and they want to deal with that burn down not only for themselves but also for their teams. And then I have business owners, or aspiring business owners that and that's the biggest range. So I have a business foundations program where we set up, let's say in 3 months, we set up the entire business, um, and in a way that really connects with the person, right? Not in a way that burns them out again because they have to do things. It's in a way that they get to do things, that they're excited to get up in the morning. And then I have people that have been with me for already, some have been with me already for 13 years, even 14, and they have multiple businesses by now, and they just want to rearrange they want to talk through and have that mirror and that reflection of what am I doing that I could change, and look at a more broad strategy for all their businesses, see how they can align their time with all of them and how they can align the strategy of all those businesses. As a coach, the knowledge, I have the tools, but the coachee, the talent, they have the knowledge. And I mean, I cannot know everything. But I do have those tools to draw that out of you like nobody else. Absolutely.
I love that. I have those tools to draw that out of you like nobody else. That is a beautiful byline for your business.
Thank you.
Look, there are so many, we could go on this conversation for hours. It's so lovely. Is there anything else you wanted to say before I ask you how people can find you?
No, please.
You're happy. How can people find you, Carolina?
So people can find me with, well, if you type in Rat Race Recovery on Google, you'll find me, usually, I think. But I also have a website, coachingbycarolina.com. And on that, if for people that are listening to this, I have a small gift. If they are interested, they can go to coachingbycarolina.com. There's a button saying courses. And there is, for those thinking about leaving the rat race, or even just for fun, and maybe just for a little bit of self-awareness, because this tool works for both people in corporate and people running their own business. And for everybody else, I have the gift of an imposter syndrome success kit. And it's under the course button again on coachingbycarolina.com. You can sign up, there's no strings attached, and you will have a 90-day access to finish that training. Let's say it will last you, it will take you about 2 hours, I think.
That's an absolutely fabulous gift, and I'll make sure that link is also in the show notes. So thank you for that. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know you, and particularly to get to know you through your dream. A very vivid fairy tale kind of dream that I'm sure our listeners are going to remember for a long time as well. So thank you so much for being a lovely guest on the Dream Show and for bringing your dream.
Well, and this was amazing. I never realized that a dream could tell me this much. So you are so skilled at what you do. I really, really enjoyed hearing about my dream and how it connects into my life. So thank you so much. I'm truly grateful.
Thank you, Carolina. I'm sure you enjoyed that conversation just as much as I did. And I think Carolina enjoyed it too. Just a reminder of her website where you can go to get that free online course about imposter syndrome. You go to her website, which is coachingbycarolina.com, all one word. And then she said there's an icon which says courses, and you can click that. Otherwise, the direct link is courses.coachingbycarolina.com. And if you'd like to contact me about your dreams, the website is janeteresa.com. That's Teresa without an H. And if you're interested in my courses on dreams, go to the Dream Academy, and the address there is dream-academy-online.com. And listen back through the podcast. If you'd like to be a guest on the Dream Show, go to my website at janeteresa.com, go to the menu, go to podcasts, go to the drop-down box. Very easy to find from there. Have a wonderful month. Thank you for listening to yet another episode of The Dream Show. I'm Jane Teresa Anderson.